we had a great session just before this, right? All the venture funds talking about their experiences in Kerala. So I'm taking the timeline a little back. Before they came, there were a few individuals who initiated the activity of investing in Kerala. Let me introduce Vinod. So when did he start? 2013, when even the word startup was not very common, right? He started investing in Kerala-based startups at that time. So that is Vinod. And now he has started a fund, again, with huge focus in Kerala. Has helped study together, right? Yeah. And from my first investment onwards, both these people are also involved in that journey. That's my personal experience. So I will hand over the mic to do a self-introduction, both Vinod and Anas. Vinod, you start.
Yeah. I think we'll do it, hi everyone, good afternoon. We'll do it a little bit differently. I'll introduce Anas and he'll introduce me. So Anas runs a company called Hurun India, which is the leading player in the Indian market for the wealth reporting industry. So if you think about Forbes, Fortune, they have the top 100 list. Anas started this in 2012, and today he is tracking more than 4,800 entrepreneurs whose net worth is more than 125 million. So he's beaten Forbes and anybody else you can think of with a F name, hands down. And the reason why he's successful is also because of the way he built the business, with a strong focus on values and integrity. And so he's not only tracking the wealth creation that is happening in the country, but also he's focusing on the young generation through his startups list. And that's where, there is an overlap in terms of why we started investing in startups as well. But he's also promoting philanthropy and art and culture. So he's a pioneer in many ways to talk about transparent wealth creation, because when you talk about transparent wealth creation, it inspires the next generation. You're not just hearing the stories of the Tatas and the Birlas and Ambanis, which we have heard for decades. But when you hear about someone who's lived in your city and grew up from a middle-class background and gone on to become a billionaire, you will be curious to learn how did they do that, and maybe if they did so, I can also do that. So that's the whole purpose of what Hurun stands for, and they're essentially telling the story of modern India through the eyes of the entrepreneurs. Yeah?
Thank you, Vinod, very kind. So Vinod, firstly, one of my best friends. But what I always tell about Vinod to everyone is he started getting professionals together to invest in Kerala. That too in 2013, right? So people to open up their wallet and start making investments in startups. And some of these startups are doing extremely well. I know some of you have heard of Arjun Pillai's startup founders, which was seeded by Vinod and Robin also, right? Then it got bought out, the next startup, Incend. Then one of the future unicorns, we do a list called the Future Unicorn Index, which is those companies with a minimum valuation of $200 million, which could go unicorn in the next 5 years. So in that, there's a company called CareStack. CareStack's first seed funding was done by Vinod again. So the impact is really huge. The other day, I was having a discussion with one of the journalists in Mumbai, and I was just debating about the impact of Tatas. So Tata's impact is that they've seeded some of the best institutes in the country, which is serving the nation, right? The seed fund or the seed capital could be low, but then the impact that these companies have had is really huge. So that's what Vinod has really done, in my opinion, in terms of creating that impact from a startup perspective. So I think really great thing. And we spoke about one of the funds, we heard one of the funds which said they've invested about 100 crores into Indian startup, but that's funds, right? So they have money, they've invested. So we in Callapina and Conglo, I think mainly spearheaded by Vinod, he's syndicated through Angel Network alone about 60 crores into startups, and mainly the startups in Kerala over the last 7-8 years. I mean, that is quite commendable, guys. Big round of applause to Vinod. Please. Thank you.
Just to add to that, yeah, so we haven't received any of the funds from the Kerala government, okay? We need to talk to the KSUM guys about this. I think if anybody deserves it, we should be getting it.
It's from his own pocket.
Over to you, Robin.
Okay, cool. Again, Vinod, how did it all begin? Like, why did you decide to start investing? What was the trigger?
So let me go a little bit ways back. So I worked in a startup in Germany in 2011. That was my whole exposure to the startup and venture capital world. And back in Germany, the entire startup ecosystem, their playbook was to look at what's happening in the US and then copy paste that. So I was working in a jewelry e-commerce startup and we were benchmarking what was going in the US. So I was tracking the US startup world, Silicon Valley, getting inspired both by those stories and so on. And then obviously I was always looking at India, even though I left India to study. I was always very passionate about giving back and staying connected with India. So I saw that the Indian startup ecosystem was also slowly taking off. You had the likes of Flipkart and Snapdeal and all these companies coming along. So I thought, this will happen in India as well. And it's early days, but if we get in right now, we can make a difference. That was the macro story. Basically, we were betting on the India story. The India story is very evident and obvious today. Nobody needs to tell that. But in 2013, we had to pitch and make people understand why India. So raising, if you're talking to an international investor, I think the India story is very obvious today. But we were hoping what has happened today would happen 10 years back. So essentially, our hypothesis has played out. That is the macro story, but more on a sort of individual. So we are patriots, right? So we want India to succeed. But more than that, also I graduated in 2005 from NIT Calicut, and all my friends, everyone had gone abroad in different parts of the world. We found it very difficult to stay in touch. So I was thinking, what is a good way for us also to sort of come back, join our hands together and kind of have the same kind of experience that we were having in college days, right? And my sort of insight when I think about now is, in college, we were together, like we were living on the campus and had so many shared experiences, which is not possible now. So what is a way to create new shared experiences so that we can again rekindle the kind of friendship that we had? That was the original thought. And then we came together and went through like a long list of things that we could do, and then finally we ended up with startup investments, because not only was it fun, it was also a way for us to stay connected with India, give back in a meaningful way, create jobs, have that impact, but also we learn a lot along the way. The founders, always teach us a lot, and it's fun to interact with the founders, and along the way hopefully make some money. This was the original genesis of why and how we got into startup investments. Yeah.
Anas, you have been part of this journey from the beginning itself, but you personally started investing quite late, right? I mean, 17, 18, yeah. Right? Why was it? Why did you hesitate to be part of that early on?
Before he answers that, let me add. So my first investment in CareStack, Anas is the one who introduced Abhilash Krishna. Most of you probably know him. Because he was running an advisory company back then. He came back from the UK to set up shop in Cochin. I also came for a project. And so in many ways, my investment journey is, very linked to Anas as well. And he also introduced us to Arjun Pillai. So, and I've invested in Arjun Pillai twice. So, but he didn't invest with me. So why is that, Anas?
Because I didn't have money, I had to build my business. And I really thought at that point, investing in my business would get more returns than investing in startups. So honestly, that was the reason. So I really was trying to build what I was doing. I think 2017 is 18 is when I took a blind sort of leap of faith. But then as I was building Hurun, about 6-7 years, I started understanding the influence of the network that I've been building over the 6-7 years. And I thought, I came across this book by Taleb called The Skin of the Game. Yeah. So in that, it did make a distinctive distinctive mention between a media person who can report about startup investments and news, and also somebody who can really make a change. And understood that I had to choose which path I had to take. And should I be just talking about them or make a real difference? So to make a real difference, I have to have skin in the game. If I have to influence my network, if I have to influence my network into investing into startups, I have to start investing. I have to start investing and tell them, hey, look, I've invested. Why don't you co-invest with me or look at investing into them? Similarly with art, right? If I have to get my network to start collecting Indian art, I have to start being a collector myself, even if I have no idea of what art collection is. So I had to have skin in the game to really get them to do. So 2018-19 is when I started investing, and I went back to my network and started asking them to co-invest. And some of the billionaires who've never invested in startups for traditional family businesses, they for the first time started investing in startups. I really hope some of them succeed for them to continue to invest, or else they might never get back in the asset class. So my intention was purely philosophical, or it's more of how do I get the group to invest and make it, because I really believe that innovation would play a huge role in India achieving a disruptive growth in economy. That is very much required for India catching up with US and China. And startups are going to play a very, very huge role in this. So that was the reason. After I started investing, I started enjoying it, and okay, that's really cool. So now I've invested in about 25, 30 startups. It's fun. So I really, being a single founder, I just learn a lot from these founders. I mean, what they're doing, their mindset about growth. So I'm really taking it as an educative experience.
One question specific to you, Anas. So you have been interacting with a lot of HNIs in India. In your opinion, how seriously do they take this asset class? Or is it like put some money just for some PR kind of thing? Or like, are they really serious about this asset class?
Definitely not PR. They are absolutely, even if they are a multi-billionaire, they know where their money is going into. That's how sharp these entrepreneurs are. They're a very smart bunch of people. But during initial days, I was having a lunch with one of the top billionaires in the country, and I asked him, he was very proud, and he was telling me, oh, look, I've started investing in startups. I've become a startup investor. I said, okay, great. Where did you invest? And he said, this company. Then I told him, oh, are you the only investor? Yeah. So how much stake did you take? I took 52%. Then I told him, all right, that's not going to succeed really, but we'll talk after 2 years. 2 years later, that company shut down, right? So that mindset of having control on the business with traditional family business was there earlier. Now, as things moved on, just before 21, they were warming up to investing into startups actively and so on. Of course, the fund routes, some of the brilliant funds are there. They, wealth managers and to distribution channels, they invest. But direct investments, they're still traditional. They understand the value of profits. The company should grow, that too profitably and sustainably. If there are good companies like that, the checks could go. I remember, I just add one recent story. I was I came across a very interesting company in the biotech space. And so one of the billionaires in the pharma biotech space, I told him there's a good company, why don't you look at investing in it? Within like 10, 15 minutes, they committed to 3 million euro check into this company, right? Then did a DD and all that stuff and everything. So if there are good companies with good track record that match their profitability sense, the investments could happen very fast. But then traditional hypergrowth model, growth at any cost, I don't think that they still haven't warmed up. I mean, I haven't really understood that model, to be honest. Just to be clear.
Okay, cool. So Vinod, to you. You started probably Kerala's first angel network, Conglo. I think it is the first one. And then you moved on to a fund. In this journey, can you share some of the proud moments and the mistakes that you have done? Mistakes means not necessarily from your side. Of course, as an investor, did you do mistakes? Are there some expectation mismatch amongst founders when it comes to seeking investments? Can you explain a bit on that?
Sure. I mean, let me start with what I probably did right, which is I have just been consistent. Over the last 10 years, if I've done one thing right, which it is just to be in the market talking to founders. Every week I'm talking to founders. over the last 10, 11, 12 years, I've easily spoken to more than 1,500 founders. And that's a data set that I have with me in terms of pattern recognition, in terms of what success looks like. So that, I think, is an asset that I have. In terms of and our approach has also always been to be very friendly with the founders and build a relationship with them. So although we start the conversation across the table, being an investor, and obviously I want the best terms and everything, but I'm there for them. I want them to succeed, and we are always thinking about how can we add value in their lives. Because I have huge respect for founders, like especially founders in India. Being a founder is very hard, but being a founder in India is like 10 times harder. I live in the US. US founders have so much more easier for them to succeed than Indian founders, just because of where you are operating. So immense respect for founders that I have, and I have a lot of empathy for them. So writing a check is the easiest thing that I can do, right? Like it's not a problem. I've never lost sleep over handing a check over to a stranger. Essentially, that's what we are doing. In angel investing, we are giving money to strangers, but I never lost sleep over that. And I think that is very important, because success will come, failures will come. Don't get swayed by that, because if you can't stomach it, then it's not for you, right? Mistakes, of course, several mistakes, and learning has been a huge part of this journey. But over a 12-year period, you have that compounding effect. So hopefully you make lesser mistakes, or you make newer mistakes, right? In the early days, we didn't know what we were getting into in terms of, even with CareStack, right? We just signed the documents. We had no idea what we signed. We actually got equity. Can you believe that? None of the founders, Rajiv, we can say, will ever take equity stake in India. Everyone goes for CCPS. But we didn't know that. It was a learning journey. It was actually with Profounders investment that we actually learned about that. Then we read a book about how the Silicon Valley investors operated, and then we got into the nitty-gritty of that. So it took like 2-3 years to understand how these terms work, and what is from the founder perspective important, and what is from the investor perspective important. Because look, there is an art and science to this, right? This whole thing started in Silicon Valley many decades ago, and it has been an iterative process. They have gone through their journey, and what we use today as a term sheet has come over many years of iteration and many mistakes that have been made. So we are kind of standing on the shoulders of giants in that sense. But founders, especially first-time founders, don't know any of this. So when they get a term sheet, sometimes they get freaked out in terms of, why are they asking this? So they need to have some understanding of why this is important. And so that is one part of the process, where just in understanding terms, we also made mistakes. We took one of the early founders offered us 30% stake in a company, and we were like, wow, we were getting a great deal. But later on, we realized that actually screws up the company in terms of success in the future, because it's almost a red flag for any of the new incoming investors to see such a cap table. So your cap table has to be healthy. What does that mean? Like, how do we ensure that in early stage? So things like that. One of the, I don't want to say regrets, but it's more like with disappointment. Like when we are getting into this, there's a lot of trust that we are giving to, that we trust founders, right? So we also expect them to give back that to us. And one experience has been where the founder has intentionally set out to defraud the entire investor group. And it's just been such a nightmare for so many years.
That happens. That also happens.
Yeah.
Just FYI.
So that's, but I think what happened there is we probably just rushed into the investment. Like, I think within a week we made that investment. We didn't do our due diligence. We didn't even meet the founder. So there are a lot of learnings like that over the years.
One point I want to add to any founders in the room: just be clear, because it should be a knowledge sharing session, right? Just to everyone here, we all take these term sheets and documents very seriously. If there is fraudulent or whatever that happens, right? The investors will go after the founders legally. It will happen. So I'm just laying it out there. So ensure the transparency is there, and the communication is maintained, the contracts are followed. Because the contract is the only piece of paper through which we trust each other and put our money into you guys. So that will happen. Okay, so just to be
Yeah, and I think transparency is key because don't try to sugarcoat. Like if things are not going well, just tell us that it's fine. We're not gonna bang your head. We'll try to help you. But sometimes what happens is they're just so scared to tell us that things are not going well, and they just keep pushing it to the very end when it's too late to do anything about it. So luckily in one of our portfolio companies last year, we uncovered that things were not going well. When we confronted the founder, he was sort of defensive, but then we gave him some time to understand for himself that, hey, the things are not going well. And then he accepted. Yeah, he accepted the situation. He had to make some tough decisions in terms of letting go of some people and then really focusing on what matters, which is at the end of the day getting customers. So, and now that company is sort of surviving, but they would have very well failed if we didn't intervene at that point. So yeah, there are learnings continue. So in this journey, either you make money or you learn. That's and in that sense, I've done multiple MBAs for sure. So yeah, but I haven't lost sleep. I think that's one thing I'm happy about. Even last year, one of our companies shut down, and it was fine. Like we just told the founder, I mean, I spent a good time with the founder in terms of helping him get through and figure out his next steps in life. So yeah.
So Anas, one of the common complaints about startup ecosystem in India, especially when it comes to investment, from founder side, is that investors are very slow in responding, right? In US, you can raise funds over a telephone call, you talk for 30 minutes, next hour you get the money in the bank. Exaggerations, of course, but what's your take on that? Indian investors being too slow?
I think you would be the best person to answer that. I think it's okay. We don't have, maybe our ecosystem is not as matured in terms of early stage investing as the US is. If we're getting there, we need more institutional capital to back high risk asset classes startups. So it will take some time. And to be honest, when we were doing, we've seen a lot of spray and pray investors. Basically, you just pray and then pray one of them succeed. When there are some very common, very famous names who does pray and pay in India. So when they come and say, oh, we got this guy in the cap table, and when they come to us, we're like, oh, Vinod, that's a red flag. So not much thought has gone into it. So we like to really go deep into the companies and startups and portfolio. We have limited capital. We don't have unlimited capital. Unfortunately, opportunity is many. So we have the liberty to really go through these companies, because any companies that enter into our ecosystem, we would like to plug them into Hurun network, either through customer access or through family office access and so on and so forth. So we got to be very careful about the founders and portfolio founders that gets invested by us.
It's not speed dating, right? Like somebody in the morning said, it's a marriage. So once we come on board, you're easily looking at a 7 to 8 year journey. So we want to be sure that who we are getting into the bed with. So in that sense, it's fine. Like there are really fast investors in the Silicon Valley, a lot of money, and they can go there and they can get that. What does not make sense is to sit in India and expect Silicon Valley terms. And valuations. If you want that, you should be there, and you will get that. So I think that's one sort of mismatch in terms of founder and investor expectations. Yes.
So you told about some of the mistakes that you have done, like taking too much equity and things like that. So which also means that was offered by the founder. It was not demanded by you, right? No. So what needs to be done to educate the founders or the startup ecosystem in general about these kind of things, and what can Startup Mission do about it? What should be their role in these things?
Yeah, come to Huddle, attend all these sessions, and there are a lot of workshops. I think in 2024 there are enough and more resources on the internet.
On the podcast.
Yeah,
every other entrepreneur is starting a podcast.
Yeah, so there's no dearth of knowledge today, right? So it's up to you. Like, don't wait for anybody to spoon feed you. Just go learn and network, and all of that is available. Um, in terms of terms, one thing I'll add is liquidation preference specifically, right? This is one of the favorite things that everybody talks about. So my sort of approach is to just peg myself to the market. Where is the market, right? I think in the 90s in Silicon Valley, the liquidation preference used to be like 3x, 4x, 5x, insane. You had times like that. And if you look at the general evolution of the term sheet.
You understand what liquidation preference is, right? No?
You want to explain it?
I don't want to explain it. It's basically...
Google it.
It's a condition where it's a term that sort of determines in what sequence who gets money, okay? It does not matter if the company is doing well and like it's a massive exit. It is going to be a huge issue when and it does not matter when the company shut down. It comes into play when there's a suboptimal outcome and there's not enough money to go around. And it determines the sequence in which who gets the money. So founders typically get it at the end, and then it stacks up in terms of all the investors in how they come in. But the general evolution of the term sheet, if you look at it, it has become more and more founder friendly over the years, 100%. Even in India, today, we are definitely at 1x, right? That's the market standard. So why I'm saying that is 5 years ago, I think it was 1.5, I remember. And our approach was to just be where the market is, because if we do something very disruptive, then it's going to impact the incoming investors on how they look at it. So we always try to sort of peg ourselves at where the market is. And it's very founder-friendly market you guys have today, so yeah.
Cool. I think we can request audience to raise questions.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. I think I'm going to miss out. Pleasure to meet you both on stage. Congratulations. Amazing, right? So
congratulations to you. $100 million fund. Yeah.
Anas, the question for you. So you've been seeing the top 1,000 wealthy people in India, the largest families in the country through the Hurun list, right? What do you think has changed in the last 5-6 years in terms of their attitude towards investing? Not just in private equity venture capital, but in terms of their thinking about investing itself. That's a question for you. Vinod, 1,200 founders is a great story. Tell us how the Indian founder is morphing vis-a-vis the Western founder or an American founder. I mean, what is that delta difference? It could be the Western guy is going somewhere else and the Indian guy is going somewhere else, but you know what I'm talking about. So if you could just give a couple of points of view on that, I would love to know a bit more. Thank you so much.
So I'll see definitely what it was 12 years back in terms of knowledge towards investing in startups, that has definitely improved. So like the case where I said, it is the top 10 families, one of the biggest wealth creators in the country, in the history of India, you know, them saying, oh, when I invest in a founder-run business, I'll take 50% stake, right? So that was about 10 years back to now, nobody would say even these kind of numbers. So that evolution is definitely there. Then you have, I've seen next generation entrepreneurs being very active in their family businesses through their family offices. So they're taking very keen interest in making direct bets on startups. Could be a smaller check, like 25 lakhs to 50 lakhs to maybe a crore, it'll go. But they take huge positions in venture capital funds directly as LPs. But when they take a direct bet, they are taking, let's say, 25 to 50 lakhs just to test the waters out, sort of thing. But definitely the attitude has changed, especially because of the next gen leaders who have educated outside, who've seen the valley, who've seen what's happening in the rest of the world, coming back to the country, they're coming back to India to set things up. And you would see a lot more. I think you would know many of them, Yash Podar or Fashirwad, or be it Hinduja's office or Inox GFL. Everybody's setting up their family offices to back startups that is aligned with their family's core business themes. It's definitely happening, yeah.
So in terms of the Indian founder versus the US founder, I think 10 years ago, first of all, the founder pool, or at least that we had access to, is quite limited, right? So there is a trend of there is this entrepreneurship wave going on in the country. When we graduated, nobody knew what a startup was. You wouldn't even think about joining something like that. Today, it is the thing to do. So just the founder pool in terms of volume is there, but also quality. I see a shift in terms of the IT project culture to the product mindset, which is why we believe India can be home to world-class product companies, right? And in Bangalore, if you go, there are a lot of that talent available. But even in Trivandrum, because of companies like CareStack, they have spent 10 years and they're building that pool of talent. So increasingly, the founders today are more and more sort of suited for this journey. I think they're all much more aware in terms of their rights and their negotiation. They're a lot more smarter. They know, they're not going to sell short, because 10 years ago we had the upper hand, and now I think it's more of a level playing field. And we are a cross-border fund, so we have this US-India corridor focus. A lot of the companies that we invest are B2B enterprise SaaS companies that are based here but selling in the US. So founders are also thinking about that, how to crack the US market. And Indian founders, we believe, have an advantage because there is some inherent cost advantage in building India. So the talent pool is there, which means product quality will be at par or can get there. Increasingly, it's getting there. The missing piece is the GTM, which for sure the US founder will have an advantage because it's their local market. And they're just better at marketing and cracking the market. Like one thing I would say is US founders, if you look at the way they grow, is just a lot faster. Like their growth rates, I don't think too many Indian startups have a similar sort of journey. And they have access to capital. So they never think of capital in terms of, it's not a scarcity for them. Like it's very easy for them to raise capital. So that is a disadvantage for Indian founders at the moment. And therefore they spend a lot of time raising capital, which is a distraction from the business. So that is something we have to solve for, and something that the US founders have an advantage. But we have some things that we can work with. And one thing I would say is, I was telling Anas the other day that we actually have an advantage because Indian founders can go and play in the US market. But a US founder, early stage, I'm not talking about an established US company getting into India, a US founder will find it very hard to come to India and do something. Very different market, they don't have that jugaad mentality, they cannot crack the Indian market, right? So that's the advantage that we have. We can play in two markets, our local market and the US market. And of course the international market as well. There are India-like markets, Southeast Asia, Middle East, Africa, and so on. Yeah. So go for it. And one more thing, this is, I think from a geopolitical perspective, India is very well positioned right now. You all know about what's happening with the US and China. And it is our time now to take advantage of that. So make the most of it. Whatever has happened in the last 10 years, any Indian in an international forum, we have a better standing. Let's say 15 years ago, like not so much, but today India is known. We have our voice heard. So if you guys are thinking about the international market, great time to play there. Make the most of it.
The organizers asked us to get the audience to ask 10 more questions. That's it. I think we're done.
Yeah, we are running short of time. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you, Vinod. Thank you, Anas. Thank you, audience.